immediately. Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe was responding to an LBC investigation which has found a possible link between the death of Vishal Malhotra in 1981 and a notorious paedophile gang.
Can't imagine what they've gone through over the last tens of years. That's a terrible thing, and now of course they're still waiting to know what happened to him and who committed that murder.
Police Scotland has confirmed it's investigating a complaint of historic abuse made against Labour peer Lord Janner. It relates to an allegation of assault on a boy back in the 1970s. Lord Janner's spokesman says he denies any wrongdoing. West Midlands Police have arrested 3 people on suspicion of Syria-related terrorism offences. The 2 men and a woman were held in dawn raids in Walsall this morning. Health campaigners are criticising plans to ban e-cigarettes from being used in enclosed public places in Wales. Cancer Research UK says there isn't enough evidence to support the view that the use of them renormalises smoking. The Duke of Edinburgh has been joking about his day job. Prince Philip was meeting students at Richmond Adult Community College in south-west London. Before declaring the building open, he told the crowd, "You're now going to see the world's most experienced plaque unveiler." LBC weather mainly dry and breezy with sunny spells for London and the south-east, highs of 16 degrees. The chance of a few light showers across England and Wales, but staying mainly dry with some sunshine. Rain likely later for the north of England and southern Scotland. Cloudier for central areas and Northern Ireland. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Eleanor Noakes.
Oh, don't forget, it's Jess's gig this Thursday.
Oh, yeah. Bit of a mission to get to, though.
Not really, I don't mind driving.
We'll never get parked over there.
There'll be a little space on a side street.
Are you sure there's room for me in the car?
Jess and Phil, me and you. It's a Smart for 4. Oh, I get it. Another important match on. And you'll be all sulky when they lose again.
The new 4-seater Smart 44, engineered with Mercedes-Benz. Feels big, drives small. From just $149 a month. Search Smart to find your nearest retailer. Based on a Smart 44 Passion on a 48-month Mercedes-Benz personal contract hire. 7,000 miles per annum. Mileage and damage charges apply. Advance payment of $149. No ownership option. Credit subject to status. Approvals by June 30th, 2015.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 4 minutes after 11. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. We broadcast from London, but across the entire nation, of course. And my guest this hour is a politician who's had he's had a foot in many constituencies across this country, but seeks next the City Hall of the capital. George Galloway will be running for mayor as an independent candidate. We've learned today that Zac Goldsmith has added his name to the list of those seeking the Conservative candidacy. We heard, of course, from the likes of Sadiq Khan and Tessa Jowell for the Labour candidacy. David Lammy also in that battle. But it will be George Galloway's candidature that perhaps raises the most eyebrows. And I say that, George Galloway, because you've only just lost a by-election.
Not a by-election, a general election.
I beg your pardon, yes,
that's
a constituency.
Yeah, but I have lived in London for 35 years. My children were born, grew up here, go to school here. I'm more of a Londoner than many who, of course, the majority of people that are now living in London were not born here. So I don't feel like I'm any kind of foreigner.
It wasn't so much the suggestion that you're an alien that I was intrigued by. It was the sort of suggestion that, you know, up in Bradford West just a month and a half ago, that was your top priority. That was where you wanted to serve. And I guess I want you to address the suspicion that you just want power and you don't care where it comes from.
No. I declared at least 2 years ago that I was interested in this job, and I told Sky News at some cost in the middle of the general election campaign that if I was not re-elected in Bradford, I'd be running for Mayor of London. And the media picked that up and ran with it. So this is not any kind of surprise.
Why do you want it?
Well, I think that London, one of the greatest cities in the world, needs leadership, and I didn't feel that the field that was on offer when I declared was up to the job of rallying and uniting the great majority of Londoners who are not, of course, the people of the square mile. They're not the people that are dripping in gold, that are to be found on red carpets outside in Leicester Square. They are increasingly, millions of them, pushed to the edge literally and metaphorically, pushed to the edge economically, pushed to the edge geographically, unable to live in London even though they have to work here and we need them to work here. And of course there are huge and diverse communities, many of which I'm really quite strong in.
So you will be championing the victims of austerity, the dispossessed, the losers, as it were.
Like in
the
Barcelona and in Milan and Rome, to some extent in New York, mayors have been being elected, speaking for that marginalised majority, speaking for the 99 rather than the 1%. Of course, you've got to have ideas on housing, on transport, on policing, on economic powers, on culture and so on.
But we'll get on to those.
Yeah.
You mentioned leadership. What are your leadership credentials?
Well, I've been elected 6 times to Parliament, as you said, in 4 different constituencies in 2 countries, Scotland and England. I have been in politics for 40 years. I helped build the biggest mass movement that Britain has ever seen, the anti-war movement, in the run-up to
leadership credentials, George. You didn't lead the anti-war movement.
I was and am the vice president of the Stop the War
There you go, the vice president. What's the definition of not being the leader? In terms of what you have taken personal responsibility for, running a city like London is not like running a political party that you set up yourself.
No, of course, none of the candidates involved have governed.
And when they're here, I'll ask them about their leadership credentials, but they're not, so I'm asking you about yours.
Well, I'm telling you about my leadership credentials. And a lot of people recognise them. That's why I'm here. It's why the bookmakers are narrowing the odds, because they believe that I can lead movements of people. And that's what I'm trying to do here, lead a movement of people who will challenge the prevailing orthodoxy that London is run by and for the elite. And you've just announced Zac Goldsmith. He's a friend of mine. If you're going to have a multi-billionaire trust fund child as your mayor, he's definitely the best one to have. He's a good and honourable person, but he's undeniably a part of the elite. And I'm speaking for those that are not.
Well, yeah, it depends how you define elite, doesn't it? You mentioned yourself a career politician is someone who many would consider to be a part of the elite as well, regardless of how many maverick paths they may have been down over the years. You can't deny that you're a career politician. That's the other sort of phrase that's used to denigrate people seeking office. Either you're a member of the elite or you're a career politician. He's one, you're the other.
Well, I think that all the candidates are politicians. People will choose what kind of politician. I think even my worst critic, and I'm waiting for their call.
Let me just remind people of the number. If you're listening, George Galloway's worst critic, 0345 6060 973 is the number.
They'd acknowledge that I'm not like other politicians. If I had been, I wouldn't have put myself in the position of being expelled by Tony Blair over the Iraq War. I wouldn't have taken up causes that I did from my teens and stuck to them through thick and thin over many decades. And I might have prospered in the political class, but I didn't, and I don't regret it.
The situation in Bradford West, I just want to clarify. A few people are asking on Twitter. You mentioned that you were going to challenge the result up there, but did you miss the deadline?
No. There's a Section 106 complaint by us, which the police are investigating, and we better not go too deeply into that in the middle of a police investigation into it, but it's a very serious complaint. I believe that it will lead to the setting aside of the Bradford West result. That will result in a by-election. I will not be a candidate. I'm running for Mayor of London.
So this is the only job on your to-do list at the moment. Yes. You haven't properly addressed the suspicion, and I appreciate that you want to represent the 99% and you want to lead London into a brave new future. But to talk about George Galloway, the man, there is a widespread perception that you just sort of can't cope with not being in the spotlight, that you need to be...
Well, I didn't ask you for a spot on this show. You asked me.
You asked to run for mayor.
Yes, but I didn't ask
why
you,
you're here.
Can you put me on the legendary James O'Brien show?
No,
you, the legend,
save it for the judge, George.
pursued me. So if you think about it
But
for a
that's
second,
partly why, because I wanted to ask you questions like this.
Yeah, you wanted to bring me on your show so you could ask me why I'm on your show.
No, I wanted to bring you on the show to ask you why you're running for mayor and whether there's any truth in the suggestions that you need the oxygen of publicity.
No, I have no need of the oxygen of publicity, but I am not short of it. I have no need of audiences. I have many on television. I'm currently negotiating a new radio show. I'm making a film.
I don't know that this is proof that you don't have a desire for the spotlight.
No, that's my point.
I know.
I'm not short of audience.
Right.
I'm not short of spotlight. But it's, if you don't mind me saying so, to a legend, it's a kind of a silly question. You ask me to come on your show to ask me why I'm on your show.
No, but I didn't, George.
Well,
I'm not telling you what people think, and a lot of people think that it's more about George Galloway
than
it is.
Spotlight, then.
It is about the politics. Well, I'd like to find out whether they're right or not. I said you should know this. You
You're
used to present a radio show
you're
yourself.
Giving me a spotlight so you can establish whether I want a spotlight.
No,
Come on,
I'm
James,
inviting you on.
nowhere.
I'm inviting you onto a radio show because you want to run for mayor,
Yes.
and I'm
So let's
examining
talk
your
about-
motivations for
well-
running for mayor and wondering how much vanity plays a part in that motivation. That's all. It's not complicated. I'm not the first person to call you vain, George Galloway.
Forfend vanity, a politician with any vanity or ego.
Well, the suggestion is you've got even more than most. That's all I'm seeking to
doubt,
understand.
Then, that will be reflected in the
Do you think you do?
No, I certainly don't think I do. But
That's where the nickname comes from, isn't it?
Which nickname?
The Gorgeous George nickname, doesn't it?
I
Come
didn't
from a
give my-
perception that you are quite vain. I don't see why it's a difficult question.
No, I was quite handsome then.
Were you?
It was 40 years ago.
Okay.
I was quite handsome. I didn't give myself the nickname. It's
No, but I'm talking about the perception of voters. You're supposed to care about that.
Well, I'm running on my record and on my abilities and on the programme I'll be putting forward. If people think that I'm doing it because I want to be in the spotlight, no doubt I'll not be able to count on their votes. I'll put them down as doubtful.
I was hoping you might say something that would disprove them or
How do you
challenge
disprove
them.
such a charge, James?
Well, that's what I'm asking you.
No, how does one?
Well, you might
asked
list
me-
all of the things that you're desperate to do and would continue to be desperate to do
I've
even
tried
if you
to do
weren't
that.
in
You
office.
said we'll come on to that later.
Well, we
You're
will come-
bogging us down
we
on
will
whether
come
or
on
not
to-
I'm seeking the spotlight.
Well, you are seeking the spotlight. You've admitted that yourself. You've just said I've got lots of other spotlights as well, so
Yes,
life
I
is
have
good.
no shortage of spotlights. I don't need to run for Mayor of London, that's my point.
All right, so we will move on to why you are and the things that you seek to do for the city. Let's begin with one of the most crucial questions that any mayor of London will ever face. And then with respect, you'll have to put your headphones on for this, George. With respect, once we've dealt with this, we will not have any other mention of the issue. We'll come to Mo first, I think, after the travel news and find out what it is you are going to do or try to do for the black cab drivers of the capital. The time is approaching 11:15. Then we will move on to all the other areas of the city and life in the city that you feel you can improve. You're listening to James O'Brien, joined for the rest of this hour by George Galloway. You can, of course, get your question to him by dialing the usual number. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. You can ask whatever you want, whether you get an answer or not. Only time will tell. It's 11:15.
I'm Chris Golds in the LBC Travel Centre. A couple of issues on the M25. Firstly, on the Surrey stretch, clockwise, one lane's blocked after a lorry broke down between Clackett Lane Services and Junction 6 for Godstone. And then on the Essex stretch, anti-clockwise, there's a lane blocked on the exit slip road because of another lorry that's broken down that they're now trying to recover just at Junction 31 for the Dartford River crossing. Now, in central London, in Yeading, A312, the Parkway, that's closed in both directions. Long delays after an accident at the Willow Tree roundabouts, causing delays back to the Ossie Garvin roundabout in Hayes and also Northolt Station. On the train, South Eastern still have delays of around 40 minutes now between London Bridge and New Cross. That's because of a signalling issue, and the Central line still struggling as well with severe delays because of an earlier signal failure at Marble Arch, and Marble Arch station itself remains closed. Keep London moving. Your next travel updates in half an hour.
This is LBC. Invest in your future with Galliard Homes, pioneers of London Docklands. We have been building landmark schemes here since 1993 and are back with Harbour Central, where apartments start at just £350,000. This is the only landmark scheme for sale. Just 5 minutes walk from the financial powerhouse of Canary Wharf. The Jubilee line takes 15 minutes to Mayfair, and from 2018, Heathrow by Crossrail will take just 39 minutes. We know Docklands. In early 2013, a 2-bed apartment in a nearby Galliard scheme was bought for £607,000. In January 2015, this apartment was resold for £800,000. Visit us on Marsh Wall E14 from June 25th till 28th. Prices from £350,000. Call 0203 770 6300 or visit harbourcentral.com.
Bar stools, office chairs, shelving, whiteboards, plastic boxes, cleaning trolleys, cantilever rackets, lockers and ladders, kick steps, pallet trucks, safes and stackers, archive boxes, office.
AJ Products has over 15,000 products for office, school, warehouse and industry. You will find surprisingly more at ajproducts.co.uk.
If your company is thinking about an office move or refurbishment, now's the time to talk to the experts. Maris Interiors have been designing and fitting out workplaces for 4 decades, from 5,000 to over 100,000 square feet. Initial designs and proposals, custom-made for your project, come free of charge and with no obligation. To arrange a meeting or find out more, visit officerelocation.co.uk. Maris. Workplace. Design. Experts.
If you feel so self-conscious about your teeth that it stops you smiling in public or eating causes you pain,
I've got a bit of a phobia about a denture. I really did not want to wear a denture.
it could all be different in just a day.
So I heard about teeth in a day and I thought, great.
I'm Dr. Michael Zivitz, dental specialist at TDC Implant Center. Our award-winning treatment could give you a full set of beautiful fixed teeth restored in just one day. A quicker, less painful alternative to traditional implants.
I saw my ex-dentist yesterday in the supermarket and I gave him a great big smile.
So see smileinaday.co.uk or call TDC Harley Street on 0203 7334 986.
James O'Brien on LBC.
18 minutes after 11, mayoral candidate George Galloway is here. The clever money, it would seem, will see Tessa Jowell with the Labour nod, Zac Goldsmith, who's thrown his hat into the ring representing the Conservatives, and the unknown quantity, the third way, if you will, in next year's mayoral election, George Galloway. A Twitter account known as Tortoise Watcher, George, wants to know who will be funding your mayoral bid.
The people. It'll be crowdfunded, just like my Tony Blair film that's coming out soon. It will be crowdfunded. The crowdfunding will be launched next week after the mayoral launch in Conway Hall on Sunday night.
So you kind of don't know how much you're going to have to play with until people start.
No, we're going to ask for 100,000. We might get more.
Would you take big donations off members of the elite?
Depends on their motivation, as long as it was transparent and as long as they didn't expect anything in return. But I'm not expecting any.
No, not at all?
Not at all.
Well, you never know. Phone lines are open. Mo is in Euston. Mo, what's your question for George Galloway?
Good morning, George.
Morning to you.
Basically, George, I've got a question for you regarding the black taxi trade. We are the best taxi trade in the world, recognized times and times. We are facing at the moment a big problem with TfL. We are facing a biggest problem and corruption of these Uber taxis, which they trade in illegally on the streets of London. Basically, I want to see and I want to know what is your vision on that.
Well, I'll run Uber out of town if I can, but the very first thing I would do as mayor is make sure that they obey the law and they obey the regulations that are laid down in the statute. And as you implied there, they're not. And TfL is not only not doing anything about that, they give every impression that they're in bed with Uber. And that goes for the mayor. It also goes, for that matter, for David Cameron. And David Cameron's close circle are deeply involved in Uber. But even if they weren't, the point is that Uber represents the kind of zero regulation, no red tape. Every man is the competitor of every other man. There's no system in place for the protection of workers, the protection of the public, and so on. And people say, I get it all the time on Twitter, well, Uber is cheaper. Well, it depends what you mean by cheap. If you're in an accident in an underinsured, seedy saloon car driven by an unregulated driver whose bona fides as a person and as a driver are completely unknown, it won't seem so cheap.
But they're not unregulated. Just to clarify, you might find the regulation inadequate, but there's no suggestion that there's.
Well, the regulation that there is not being applied. That's
a different accusation, isn't it? That's not.
Well, they're effectively unregulated if they're not being forced to obey the regulation.
Every major city in the world has found Uber has met, or most major cities in the world have managed to accommodate Uber. Why shouldn't London?
Well, some have banned them, of course.
Not many.
No, but it's growing, the number, and I'll seek to ban them, because I think that having lost our red telephone boxes and our red pillar boxes now being owned by the King of Kuwait, we need to protect the black cabs. They're a part of our heritage.
But that's an emotional argument, and we need
nothing wrong with a bit of emotion, James. London is London. You could turn the Tower of London into a block of luxury apartments, and you could say that would be emotional to stand against it, but I do stand against it.
And how well so? I think we'd all stand against that, George. Well, in terms of due diligence, how feasible is it to run them out of town? Because it's a great campaigning phrase. Mo, you love the sound of that, am I right?
Yes, you are right.
You see, so George knows what he's doing, but how plausible is it? How much research, how much work have you done to establish whether or not it's doable rather than just cheerable?
But let me say, if you'll forgive me, I've always been with the black cabs long before I was running for Mayor of London.
Of course.
As a talk show host, I was a cabbie's favourite for many years.
I bet you're not an honourary member of the LCDC, are you?
Well, I had their spokesman on my television show just the other day.
I got the badge, mate. Save it.
Good for you.
Tell me about how feasible it is to run
feasible,
Uber out
and
of town.
I am in touch with campaigners in the cities where they have been banned, and I do have a plan for banning them. You'll forgive me if I don't give them prior warning of it. But let's say, as a very first step, all the regulations they're currently breaking would be rigorously enforced by me, which would change the paradigm for a start. And I want to know why TfL are so soft on them. Every time the cab drivers go to the court on this subject, they're asked by the judge, why are you doing this? Why isn't the regulator doing it? Why isn't TfL doing it? And I think that most of the cabbies have got their suspicions about that. They think it's personal, that it's corruption as such. I don't. I think it's ideology. It's the ideology of absolute deregulation.
Well, and money. I mean, there's money to be made. There's no. I don't think that's particularly political or controversial. The backers include Goldman Sachs. There's huge amounts of cash to be siphoned from the pockets of black cab drivers and into the pockets of people who back outfits like Uber.
Well, black cab drivers.
I don't think you're going to have many enemies on this one, are you? Really?
Well, I don't know. Black cabs pay tax. Their drivers pay tax. Uber pays zero tax in Britain, and yet hopes to build a monopoly in a city like London. It's ridiculous.
Let's go to Johnny, who's in Finchley. Johnny, what's your question for George Galloway?
Hello, James. Hello, George. Always a delight to hear you talking.
Thank you.
As you know. George, I'm Jewish. And last year, during the Israel-Gaza conflict, it seemed that London Jews were exposed to a lot of anti-Semitism. If that were to arise again, what protection would you afford the London Jews, seeing that a lot of them are also black cab drivers?
I wasn't expecting that segue at the end, but it's a valid point. It's a valid point that you make. I'll go a little further, Johnny, with your permission. George, you called us as an MP up in Bradford to make the city an Israel-free zone. Will you be doing that in London?
No.
Why not?
Because foreign policy is a matter for the Parliament and the government, and the London Mayor is not the Pope or the President or the Foreign Secretary. So no,
nor is the MP for Bradford West.
But he's a member of Parliament, which
not
is
of government.
No, but he's a member of Parliament. He's entitled to fight for a government line.
So you would
I'm
make it...
I'm not going to... No, the answer is clear. I'm not going to try and call for London to be an Israel-free zone, but neither am I resiling from my views, which are shared by millions in London, that the treatment of the Palestinian people over many decades, but last summer in Gaza in particular, or most recently, was savage, was almost unbelievable, and the attitude of the British government and most of the British media towards it was reprehensible. But this has nothing whatsoever to do with an attitude towards Jews or Jewishness. Actually, I think at least 2/5 of my closest circle are themselves Jews, and they have exactly the same attitude to the Palestine question as me. So this has nothing to do with Jews, nothing to do with anti-Semitism, against which I have stood all of my life, as I've stood against all kinds of racism. And anti-Semitism is just a form of racism, though the most virulent, the most deadly in our history.
And as you know, to try to separate support for Israel from Jewishness is in the hearts and minds of many of Israel's supporters rather harder to do than you've just acknowledged. So what will you say to or say for Londoners who believe, for perfectly understandable religious, historical, cultural reasons, that Israel is justified in doing almost anything she wants to protect her borders or to protect her future? What would you say to Londoners who subscribe to that school of thought? Because you're a million miles apart.
That they are wrong, and that the notion, my country, right or wrong, is preposterous in any case, but the notion that somebody else's country, right or wrong, is even more absurd. And most Jews in the world were deeply uneasy about the events in Gaza last summer. Some rallied to the Israel flag, but most did not. And the demonstration that was called in support of Netanyahu last summer was one of the smallest Jewish community demonstrations that London had seen for many a year, and perhaps ever, actually, on the matter of Israel. So look, I'm not fighting this election on Israel-Palestine, but if anybody wants to argue with me about the justice of the Palestinian case, you'll find I'm quite a redoubtable arguer for Palestine.
I'm sure we will, although Johnny alluded also to the fact that for many exponents of anti-Semitism, they don't really care whether you are pro or anti-Israel. They care only that you're Jewish, and that is something that a mayor of London, if there were to be a flare-up in the Middle East again, a mayor of London would bear some responsibility for.
Well, I've supported, for example, the Metropolitan Police protection of Jewish schools and synagogues and other community buildings. On the record, I will support the protection of any religious minority in London against the bigots and the haters. And of course the same will be true of Jews. And the idea that a support for the Palestinian cause in any way conflates with the kind of bigots that are about to try and march, for example, in, I think it's in Hackney. They've certainly been trying in Hackney. Amongst the Hasidic communities there. I'll be there on the streets with the Jewish community, fighting them off if necessary. I hope it doesn't come to that.
Will you be welcome?
Well, whether I'm welcome or not is another matter. My conscience dictates that I stand beside foursquare any minority that's suffering discrimination of any kind.
Johnny, back to you. Sorry, I should have invited you to respond to that. Are you encouraged by what you've heard?
I haven't really heard anything because last year I felt very threatened, and I'm 6'3" and I weigh over 200 pounds. I felt very threatened on the streets, and in fact, my daughter, who at the time was 10 years old and goes to a Jewish school, was taken on an outing to Notting Hill Gate, and the class, the school outing rather, the class was split into 4 or 5 groups of half a dozen each, and on 3 occasions within 1 hour, my 10-year-old daughter was sworn at for being a Jew.
I need to ask, and I may have misunderstood the thrust of your inquiry here, but what's that got to do with George Galloway?
How he would protect Jews
well,
as a mayor if there was a flare-up of anti-Semitism in London.
Okay, Johnny doesn't feel you've provided an adequate answer. You probably do. Do you want to add anything else?
Just that the words Notting Hill Gate were resonating for me because I was myself quite severely assaulted there last August, and hospitalised by someone wearing an Israel Defence Force military garb who said in court when he was sentenced to 16 months in jail that he did it for Israel. So I'm utterly opposed to violence, whether it is physical or verbal, and verbal violence against a schoolgirl in Notting Hill Gate is certainly outrageous and a little bit surprising, I must say. But the truth is, there are racists attacking all kinds of religious minorities and attacking them in a very serious way. And we must protect all our minorities. My slogan is, a London for all. And that certainly includes London's Jewish communities.
Johnny, I have to go towards the news now. We're already a little late for it. Remember, as I bid farewell to Johnny, it potentially frees up a phone line for you if you've been trying and failing to get through. Judicious use of redial is ordinarily the best way to do it. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. George will be with us for another half an hour, so there's time for you to get your question or indeed your point to him before 12 noon. The time now is 11:32. Eleanor Noakes is here with the headlines.
Conservative MP Zac Goldsmith has announced he wants to join the running to become Mayor of London after being re-elected as Richmond Park MP at the general election last month. He says he wants to consult his constituents first to get their permission to stand. James has been speaking to George Galloway, who has already announced his intention to run for Mayor. He's given LBC his reaction to the announcement by Zac Goldsmith.
If you're going to have a multi-billionaire trust fund child as your mayor, he's definitely the best one to have. He's a good and honourable person, but he's undeniably a part of the elite. And I'm speaking for those that are not.
The name HSBC could disappear from British high streets as the bank rebrands its UK retail operations. It's fuelled speculation branches could go back to being called Midlands Bank. HSBC has also confirmed plans to cut up to 8,000 jobs in the UK and 25,000 globally. West Midlands Police are holding 3 people on suspicion of terrorism offences related to Syria. The 2 men and a woman, who are all in their 20s, were held in raids in Walsall this morning. LBC weather mainly dry and breezy with sunny spells for London and the south east, highs of 16 degrees. The chance of a few light showers across England and Wales, but staying mainly dry with some sunshine. Rain likely later for the north of England and southern Scotland. Cloudier for central areas and Northern Ireland. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Eleanor Noakes.
This is LBC.
OK, here it comes. The question that will make you a winner. How much will it cost your business to send up to 100 parcels to your UK customers with leading delivery company Interlink Express?
100 parcels to 100 customers.
Have to hurry you. We need to wrap this up. Just like those parcels.
Sorry, nothing.
Correct! They're so sure a free trial will convince you to keep using them, they'll deliver up to 100 parcels for nothing. Just go to interlinkexpress.com and everyone's a winner.
New customers only. Conditions apply.
If you run a business and you're near a computer, type the name of your company into Google now. Chances are everything you find will be good. But all it takes is one negative review and your reputation on any kind of digital and social media site can change just like that. Reputation.com can manage and improve your brand's image online to make sure potential customers find out about the good reputation you've worked so hard to build up. For a free report on your online reputation and to find out how we can help, visit Reputation.com.
At Simply Business, we're different because we focus on small business insurance, protecting the people who are building Britain's economy. The builders, the hairdressers, the bookkeepers. We're proud to support 46,000 of you here in London with tailored insurance at a great price. Because we know that Britain is built one kitchen extension, one cut and blow dry, one tax return at a time. Search Simply Business online now to get a quote. Simply Business is authorised and regulated by the FCA.
You own this place?
Yes, and you are?
Winston Wolfe, Direct Line. So you're a landlord, a property magnate, a wise guy.
I wouldn't go that far, it's just my wife's old flat.
But you have Direct Line landlord insurance, right? After all, they'll pay to repair or replace a broken boiler as standard.
No.
Oh, maybe not such a wise guy.
Boiler cover as standard. Can your landlord insurance do that? Search Direct Line Landlord. Boiler cover with buildings cover excludes wear and tear, underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
Some watches are just watches, but many are luxurious Swiss handcrafted timepieces worth thousands of pounds. And at watches.co.uk, these are the watches that we're really interested in. So if you want to sell a quality Swiss watch, like a Rolex, Patek Philippe, Omega, or other fine Swiss watch brand, and get immediate payment, or if you would like to purchase or part exchange one, visit watches.co.uk. It couldn't be easier. Watches.co.uk, the pre-owned Swiss watch specialist.
Drop everything. The unmissable Lexus summer sale is here.
From the 11th to the 25th of June, you can get 3.9% APR plus a £3,500 contribution towards a deposit on the award-winning Lexus IS. Lexus. Amazing in motion. 3.9% APR representative with £3,500 finance deposit contribution on a new Lexus IS when financed through Lexus Financial Services. Terms and conditions apply, subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Participating centres only.
James O'Brien on LBC.
24 minutes to 12. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, joined this hour by the mayoral candidate George Galloway. Just to clarify, you'll be running as an independent, not as a...
No, I'll be running as the Respect candidate,
Right.
because we're going to run a slate for the London Assembly too, to try and establish a foothold in that oft-forgotten body.
Indeed.
Which costs millions to run, but nobody knows anybody that's in it or anything that it does.
Well, I'd like to think LBC listeners are a little better equipped than perhaps the average punter with the workings of the London Assembly, but your point stands. Let me just steer you back, if I may, George Galloway, to the events that you mentioned of last summer when you were assaulted in the street. Your attacker did receive a 16-month sentence you were punched, I think, 10 times before a kung fu kick was administered towards you. You're a tough guy, but I sensed immediately after that, when you were talking about it, that you were genuinely very shaken by this.
I was really shocked because it came out of nowhere. You know, I'm a former boxer. I like to think, or I used to be able to. I'm 60 now. I was 60 when the assault happened. That I can, if I'm faced with someone, at least put up a fight. But when it comes literally out of the blind spot and there's a blow to your face before you even see the person who is about to deliver it, and then you're lying on the pavement with your back already racked in pain, and the person then climbs on top of you and is really, if he'd had a knife, I'd be dead. And the sort of crazed look in his eyes made me wonder if the knife was next. So it has shaken me. The wounds have healed, but the psychological damage, if you like, is there. I was subsequently attacked 2 more times. So I was attacked 3 times in 4 months. He got 16 months. The other 2 who assaulted me, one verbally, one physically, got on-the-spot fines. But the last of those was on Christmas Eve in Winter Wonderland in Hyde Park, with a bodyguard standing next to me and my 3-year-old son holding my hand. You might ask yourself, what kind of person would assault someone in those circumstances on CCTV? It just, if you like, buttresses my view that violence of this kind, political violence, is completely and utterly beyond the pale. We can't have it. You can't live in a free and democratic country and permit political violence of this kind.
If we approach that from the other angle, and if you were seeking to explain it to your son when he was a little older and he asked, why do these people hate you so much, what would you say? How do you rationalise that?
Well, it's a very good question. The nature of politics is divisive. You're choosing A or B as a path or a candidate, and it's therefore divisive. The bigger the stakes, in this case all these assaults were linked to the Middle East, the stakes are very high. The quarrel is very ancient and deep. And if you take a stand on one side, then you're going to make enemies on the other side. And if you're quite good at it, if you'll allow me to blow my own trumpet on that.
Of course.
I mean, the reason why the wildest supporters of Israel hate me so much is because I've been over decades quite a successful advocate of the case against them.
So have a lot of people. They don't get attacked in the street. So if I've understood you correctly, the people who don't get attacked aren't as good as you at criticising Israel.
Well, they may not have been as forthright, and they haven't, if you like, scored as many goals. I mean, I think that the wildest supporters of Israel reckon that I've been a part of a transformation in Britain. When I took this cause up in 1975, you could have fitted all the supporters of the PLO into this studio. But now we're millions. In fact, the great majority of British people know that the Palestinian issue is central to conflicts in the Middle East and therefore in the world. And I think they think that I have played a role, maybe an important one, in helping transform British public opinion on that matter.
And to people who think that then leaches into anti-Semitism, you say what?
That it has nothing whatsoever to do with anti-Semitism or Jewishness. We love Jews. We're against the political creed of Zionism. You know, you didn't hate Russians because you were against the Soviet Union. You hated communism. You don't hate Jews because you're against Zionism and the apartheid state of Israel.
Mentioning the Middle East, let's go to Vino, who's in Wandsworth. Vino, what's your question for George Galloway?
Hi, George.
Hi.
I've been intrigued ever since I saw your picture in the papers with Saddam Hussein as to the sort of discussions you had with him. You know, I don't think anybody's privy to it. We don't know about it. But it was interesting. Could you be able to tell us something at all?
Well, I met him twice, once very briefly in 1994, and the second time for a much longer period, about 90 minutes, in August of 2002. So my experience with him is necessarily limited to those two occasions. What I would say is this, that the great majority in Iraq wishes that Britain and America had not invaded and occupied their country, because it was a country with many problems. Under Saddam, it has far, far more problems now. And worse, for us, those problems have cascaded around the world. So my view, if that's what you're asking, is that the invasion and occupation of Iraq was a catastrophic error.
I think he possibly wasn't asking that. But, you know, correct me if I'm wrong. You just wanted to know what they talked about, right?
Well, I was quite interested to know.
I think it was a more gossipy. I think it was a more gossipy question than political. And let me just throw in one first of mine. Do you regret saluting his courage and indefatigability as you did? Because I mean, he was a psychopath.
I regret the fact that the editing of the piece implies that I was saluting the courage, strength, and indefatigability of the Iraqi people. But I've said that 10,000 times. There's no point really in going over it. What I will tell you of more contemporary, because that was in 2004, this was in 1994, this was in 2002. I did say to him, you have to let these arms inspectors in, and you have to destroy every single piece of weapons of mass destruction that Iraq has, because otherwise Iraq is going to be invaded, overwhelmed, and will be broken into pieces. And he said to me, we would not lie to you. We know everything that you've done to defend the people of Iraq. But we do not have any weapons of mass destruction. And I thought to myself, crikey, he's even lying to me now at the 11th hour. But it turns out he was the one telling the truth, and the leaders of the free world were the ones who were lying. Or wrong, depending on your point of view. I prefer lying. And we'll see from Chilcot who's right about that. Somebody, Matthew Norman, a friend of mine, great writer and humorist, put it in my Blair film like this, that there were three people dominating the news at that time: George Bush, Osama bin Laden, and Saddam Hussein. And the only one who wasn't a religious maniac was Saddam Hussein. And that actually is the truth.
It's just coming up to 11:45. The hour is flying by, but there's still time for you to get your point to George Galloway, mayoral candidate. If you want to do that, you can email james@lbc.co.uk. You'll struggle to get through on the phones, to be honest, so why not send me a tweet to @Mr. James O'B. Actually, on the subject of Twitter, a lot of people are asking me why you block so many on Twitter.
I have a criterion. Bigots.
You have a hair trigger.
Not so much nowadays, actually. Bigots, sectarians, blasphemers, people who libel, I block them. Though not so much now. I've kind of given up blocking. I do have 1 million followers on social media, so I need help to run these things. I'm not doing it all myself. So if you think you've been blocked unfairly, let me know and I'll reinstate you.
How are they going to let you know?
There are ways, I think. There are ways.
We'll ponder that during the travel news. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. It's 11:45.
I'm Chris Golds in the LBC Travel Centre. Still got these big problems in Yeading, the A312, the Parkway, still closed in both directions for accident investigation work between the Willow Tree roundabout and the White Hart roundabout. It's causing delays all the way back to the Ossie Garvin roundabout in Hayes and also onto the Target roundabout in Northolt. Not helping matters on the M4 heading to London either. That's much heavier than normal just before junction 2 for Brentford. Delays all the way back to Hayes there. It's much worse than usual onto the two-lane elevated section, with most of you avoiding the problems on the Parkway between Hayes and Northolt. Plus there was a breakdown as well. On the train, South Eastern had delays around 40 minutes still between London Bridge and New Cross. It's all because of a signalling problem at New Cross. They're expecting the delays to continue till at least 1 o'clock this afternoon. And on the tubes, the Central Line still has severe delays because of that signal failure at Marble Arch. Marble Arch station remains closed as well. Keeping London moving in next travel updates in half an hour.
This is LBC.
Thursday nights on LBC. Join Clive Bull for The Business Show with Moo.com.
If you do feel, where do I get this business knowledge from? Go out to business events, find people who have got that knowledge, surround yourself with them, and then literally 6 months down the line, before you know it, you will feel much more confident about the business knowledge as well.
Thursday nights at 9 on LBC. The Business Show with Moo.com. For business cards as unique as you.
Okay, here it comes. The question that will make you a winner. How much will it cost your business to send up to 100 parcels to your UK customers with leading delivery company Interlink Express?
100 parcels to 100 customers.
Have to hurry you. We need to wrap this up. Just like those parcels.
Sorry, nothing.
Correct! They're so sure a free trial will convince you to keep using them, they'll deliver up to 100 parcels for nothing. Just go to interlinkexpress.com and everyone's a winner.
New customers only. Conditions apply.
You took a risk and asked her to dance. You took the plunge and asked her to marry you. Life isn't about whether you take a risk, but whether the risk is worth the reward. Rate setters reap the rewards by cutting out the middleman to get a better return. Your capital is at risk, but then earning nothing is not an option, especially when it comes to investing your money. Search RateSetter and make today pay. RateSetter is authorized and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority.
Drop everything. The unmissable Lexus summer sale is here. From the 11th to the 25th of June, you can get 3.9% APR plus a £3,500 contribution towards a deposit on the award-winning Lexus IS. Lexus. Amazing in motion. 3.9% APR representative with £3,500 finance deposit contribution on a new Lexus IS when financed through Lexus Financial Services. Terms and conditions apply, subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Participating centres only.
What about this one, love?
Is it semi-detached?
Yeah.
Is it 3 bedrooms? Does it have an ensuite?
Yeah.
Gas central heating? Garden?
Yep.
South-facing?
Yeah.
Conservatory?
Yep.
Shops nearby?
Yeah.
Off-road parking?
Yeah.
Double glazing? Does it have a walk-in wardrobe?
It's got a shed.
It's difficult enough choosing the right house. At NatWest, we help make choosing your mortgage easier. We can even tell you how much you could borrow in just 10 minutes. Talk to us today about our lowest ever mortgage rates, or search NatWest Mortgages.
Hello. Come in, Sue. The gas man's just leaving. Bye, Derek.
I had British Gas round last week too. My engineer was so thorough.
Oh, I bet he wasn't as good as mine.
He called to say when he'd arrive.
Mine fixed the boiler in a jiffy.
Mine was so tidy.
Mine assembled my flat-pack dining table and 6 chairs.
Really?
No, I made that one up.
To find out why 9 out of 10 of our surveyed home care customers would recommend us, call 0800 975 0999 or search British Gas.
James O'Brien on LBC.
11 minutes to 12 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Back to your calls in just a moment. George Galloway is with me. I'll just ask you this one, if I may, George. Ask him why, as a Scot, he wants us to remain part of this corrupt, pro-Trident, pro-austerity union. You were quite active in the Yes campaign.
I fought hard in the referendum campaign to save the unity of this island, and I would do so again. I don't believe that the Scottish Independence Project would have delivered the kind of change that your texter, tweeter imagines. I think quite the opposite. There would have been a race to the bottom between a permanently conservative England producing a paradise for free markets, deregulated, low public spending, low taxation, and Scotland would have had to chase them to the bottom, to the detriment of working people on both sides of the border. I'll grant him this. I did think that Labour would be elected in May and that the benefits of sticking together would have been, I hoped, quite quickly apparent. That has not happened. It's therefore weakened the union. I suspect that Scotland is on its way out of the country. And in any case, as we're talking about me in London, it's about time London got into this devolution home rule debate, because all kinds of places, Scotland, Wales, the north west of England, are all in the devolution business, and London needs to get into it. We produce most of the wealth in the country, but we have almost no power. We talked jokingly, I did, about the London Assembly earlier. It's a toothless, powerless organisation for the most part. We need a powerful parliament in London, and we need powers over some of the economic and other aspects of our lives here.
Which leads us into Rav's question from Harrow. Rav, what would you like to ask George Galloway?
Hi there, George.
Hi.
Hi there. So I've listened to quite a bit of what you've said, some of which I agree with, some of which I am don't quite understand. For instance, I don't know if George really appreciates economics and its role within London. We need pro-choice. We need a market in which Londoners have a choice. For instance, Uber is a good thing. Uber provides choice to Londoners, and the market will decide. I mean, I don't understand why George keeps lambasting these different pro-business choices, and I really wonder whether he appreciates how important businesses can be to London and how that is what is going to be the antidote to inequality.
And this is one of the reasons Labour is thought to have lost in May, is that they were perceived as somehow anti-business.
Well, my view is this, that markets cannot be allowed to decide everything. If they did, children would still be going up chimneys. The state has a right to, a responsibility to, ensure the public good. And so I believe in a state and private mix, a mixed economy. I don't believe in unfettered, untrammelled free markets, although the Conservatives do, and Uber is the personification of that. It seems to work for you. It doesn't work for the great majority of people in London.
And every black cab driver, Rav, is a small businessman, surely?
That's correct. I mean, unfortunately, the way the cookie crumbles is Uber have the resources, they have the marketing power.
Yes, which is why they're doing so well. I did say when Mo asked the original question we were only going to take one on cabs, so I'm sticking to my guns on that one. And I want to hear from Ali, who's in Willesden. Ali, what's your question?
Hi. Good morning, George. I believe you believe in human rights, and I want to ask you. I'm an Iranian in exile. There are around 6 million Iranians in exile out of Iran. 100,000 Iranians have been executed according to Amnesty International and Human Rights of the United Nations. You know Islamic Republic is one of the ruthless terrorist organizations in the world, yet you work in Press TV, which belongs to Islamic Republic of Iran. How can you be a mayor of a metropolitan city when you work for Islamic Republic of Iran and Press TV? You even took Ken with you, Ken Livingstone, to Press TV. How can we talk about human rights and justice when you work for Islamic Republic of Iran?
Well, I guess I'll put you down as doubtful in the election. I present a television programme on Press TV, as I do on Russia Today, and as I would do on Sky, if they would offer me one. I'm responsible for what I say on my show on those platforms, not for the governments that ultimately own them.
But you give them credibility by being there, don't you?
Well, would I give Rupert Murdoch credibility by being there if I took a show on Sky? I don't know. If I were parroting the point of view of Rupert Murdoch or Iran or Russia, that would be condemnable, but it isn't true.
But they are, two deeply suspect regimes, Russia and Iran, and you will be seen as somehow supporting them by taking their shilling. Some people have pulled out, of course, of presenting on Press TV as a result of this very, very question, including my colleague Nick Ferrari. Some people have had acts of conscience.
I wasn't going to, for reasons of politesse, bring that up, but Nick Ferrari was on the payroll of Press TV, as was Andrew, the BBC fellow, the famous now witch hunter on the Daily Telegraph, and so on. So, look, we're professionals, James. We present programs.
Speak for yourself,
and we stand or fall on what we say and do on our programs. I don't share your analysis of the governments of Iran or Russia. And in any case, I'm not speaking for either.
And yet you take their money.
Well, I'm a television presenter. Of course, everybody that presents.
Is there anyone
shows,
you wouldn't work for? Is there anyone you wouldn't take money from?
If any platform, including Rupert Murdoch, offered me a show, my only criterion is this. Don't ever tell me what I should say. Don't ever tell me what I must not say. And no one has on any of the platforms that I've worked on.
Ali's figures are accurate. The number of executions in Iran. These are.
I don't know how long a period that is over. If it's from 1979 until now, it's 100,000 too many.
Yes.
I'm against all executions.
It's still illegal to be gay there.
It's not actually illegal to be gay, but it's illegal to practice gay sex.
Oh, that's all right.
But it's not illegal to be gay. But it's horrific in either case. It's not illegal to be gay in Russia, but they have a...
So if ISIS TV came to you tomorrow and said, George Galloway, we've got just the gig for you, how do you fancy it?
No, because I'm the country's...
We promise not to tell you what to say. We promise not to influence you in any way.
I'm the foremost opponent of ISIS. I want to see them all lying dead in the street. And if the British government had listened to me right at the beginning, there never would have been an ISIS. So, no, is the answer to that. But the states that own Press TV and own Russia Today, and the BBC is owned by the British state. There are all kinds of state broadcasters. And I'm ready to stand or fall. I've got 50,000 videos on YouTube of what I've said on those platforms over the years. And I stand by all of it.
So would you work for an Israeli television channel if they offered you the right?
No, I wouldn't.
Why not?
I wouldn't, because of my political attitude to Israel, that I believe in no recognition, no normalization with Israel until it has negotiated a settlement with the Palestinian people, and it has not yet.
Just to clarify, you wouldn't have any problem working for a Jewish television station. It's an Israeli state-funded one.
Absolutely. I love Jews. I just hate the Israeli apartheid state.
And some people will be deeply unhappy that you even employ that language, but I sense that as the mayoral election looms ever closer, you won't be stopping.
No. Jimmy Carter was the first person to call it an apartheid state, the former president of the United States. I believe that he was right about that.
It's very short of time. Are we too short of time? Can we squeeze in? Mary and Finchley, can you just ask your question very briefly, if you don't mind?
Yeah, you've been around, Mr. Galloway, good morning, good afternoon. You've been around Westminster an awful long time. Do you have a personal opinion as to why Greville Janner has never been prosecuted? And there was evidence from before. He evidently has had dementia.
All allegations, of course, persistently denied. But the question is clear. Why do you think that these allegations have never been officially followed up?
Because he's part of the magic circle around Westminster of the powerful looking after their own. And I listened to your discussion on that earlier. It was very, very powerful radio. It is an outrage that Greville Janner was not prosecuted when he was able, and it's an outrage that we're being told that he's now unable to face justice, but nobody quite believes it, and the best place to establish it would have been in a court of law. Greville Janner made a career out of demanding, and entirely correctly, I supported him, that every last Nazi war criminal, however old, however infirm, however they are suffering from dementia or anything else, if necessary, should be carried into a court of law to face their heinous crimes. And I think the same is true of Janner.
George Galloway, final question. This is a tweet from Brendan. This is during a run-in you had a few years ago with Frank Lampard, James. George Galloway described you as a disc jockey making a name for himself. Is an apology due?
I'm not sure if I did do that, because I'm actually one of your admirers. But if I did, then I apologise. Though we've all been disc jockeys from at one time or another.
Indeed we have. Time is just approaching 12 noon. George Galloway, many thanks. You'll be back, I'm sure, as the mayoral election looms ever closer. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Back into the news of today, straight after the news, and that once again involves animals that some people call pets and other people call demonic, devilish, and whether or not those two camps can ever be encouraged to meet. The question that seems most pertinent to that ambition is this: why do people want dogs that are usable as weapons? People who tell me they don't want the dog to be a weapon, why not choose a dog that isn't? Why not choose an animal that is not prone to particularly vicious behaviour? I want to understand. I've tried in the past and I've failed, but you never stop trying. Time now is 12:01.
On FM, online,